Lecture 7. All is mind, matter is mind materialized. The full import of this statement will not dawn upon you all at once. It needs time for contemplation. Sometimes it is difficult for the student to comprehend this wonderful truth, but it must become a mental fact to the student, because it is the truth, and truth eliminates error. When we have error in our minds, it reproduces itself. When we have truth in our minds, it eliminates error. So you must contemplate the great truth that all is mind, and matter is mind materialized. Man has split the atom and used electronic energy. He has measured the distance of the planets and is on his way now to visiting the nearest of them to the Earth. Yet the greatest knowledge has not yet been tapped. How is mind materialized? Mind is materialized through the power of thought. Where does thought originate? Thought originates in the consciousness. The next question is, where does consciousness originate? Consciousness originates in the divine mind. It is the moving factor in the divine mind, just as it is the moving factor in man's mind. These are tremendous and important statements, and I know that when they are completely and properly comprehended, they will give the student a new lease of life. He will begin to understand not only his own thinking, but also the reason behind those things surrounding him. Therefore, these statements require time for contemplation before the full import of the meaning takes root in your mind. It must be built up in the mind to become the dominant idea. If the dominant idea in your mind becomes the truth, then you will find that adverse conditions will disappear from you altogether, because the dominant idea is always the orbit round which everything must move. Just as the planets revolve round the sun, so do all thoughts revolve round the dominant idea, when the mind is organized according to the law of truth of the indwelling life. To identify yourself with that life is to get into the stream of cosmic life. It is the expression of the infinite love, wisdom, and power that creates the perfect state in man. When mankind realizes this, the whole world will change. The perfect state can never cease, for it is our foundation, our salvation. When we make it a reality in our life, here on earth, then we will be in heaven, because heaven is a state of consciousness, and hell is also a state of consciousness where man is reacting to his own negative conditions. He makes a hell of his own life, in his own mind, by reacting to his own adverse conditions and thoughts. So you see, it is vital that we have the dominant idea of truth, and around that dominant idea build that which will outpicture and plan our life. The source of our being is God, and once we become aware, then we know who our Father is. We become aware of the great inner light, for there is no darkness in the divine light that shineth in man. Man lighteth his own consciousness by the awareness of his God consciousness or Christ consciousness. His own consciousness becomes lit because he recognizes his own God consciousness, the supreme factor in him. Man's personal consciousness is just an outer expression of the inner consciousness, where the personality seems separate and surrounded with things, reacting to conditions and circumstances that may be good and bad. But man's divine consciousness does not know or react to any of these conditions, because it is not subject to them. When man begins to look inward, he finds this divine consciousness, and when that conscious state is established, the other passes away and dissolves into nothingness, because it has no power of its own. Man himself can, for the time being, by his own thought, create his own prison walls. According to his own concept, so is he limited. Even man's created concept of himself is a limitation. It is not what it is, but that it is. Most people make an image of the divine and put him so far away that they can never reach him. By putting the divine outside ourselves, we will never reach him. We will always be looking for God away in the distance, when in reality he is exactly here now within. It is the recognition of the divine in man's own consciousness that makes God a reality in man's life. When once God begins to work, that work never ceases but goes on expanding into more and more radiant forms of beauty, because it is the expression of the infinite, which is in itself love, wisdom, and power, eternal, spaceless, deathless, and birthless, a never-ending expansion within man himself. This is the glorious truth, and it is not an imaginary thing, it is actually eternally true. These days of creation are still in their prime, and the germ of the new heaven and the new earth, which the Bible promises, are already maturing in the heavens and the earth. They are now only awaiting, as St. Paul says, for the manifestation of the sons of God to follow up the principle of evolution to still further expansion into the glory that shall be revealed. Man's true spiritual evolution commences when he realizes the truth of his own being, first in the individual and in the race. So we see how the whole scheme of things is worked out so perfectly now, by the great architect of the universe. Man's fears are all formed from his lack of understanding of the materialized world that surrounds him. We must listen less to what others have to say about the phenomena of the world and ponder more over the power behind the phenomena. This power brings us nearer to that indwelling life and presence of God divine mind. The cause of all perfect objective phenomena, the cause of all form, is greater than all form. The indwelling life intelligence is the power behind all things, seen or unseen, so that every time you think of the indwelling life, identify yourself with it and see the body as the inter expression of it. Thus there is a wholeness created, a healing, that makes itself known to you through the release of the spiritual energies from within. Immediately one begins to recognize this wonderful truth of the indwelling life. The spiritual energies begin to work from within outwardly and express themselves in the body, because the body is but the wisdom of the living God. But conditions in the body are created by man himself through not knowing or understanding the true law. He misinterprets what he sees, and because he reacts to the conditions external to himself in a negative way, he creates thoughts which coincide with what he believes, and therefore his beliefs lead him into darkness. The cosmic wholeness which occupies every atom in space is placed in your hands to use. I use the words cosmic wholeness and want you to ponder over these words. The cosmic wholeness which occupies every atom in space is placed in your hands to use. You therefore achieve the power to be healthy, that complete joy and ever-increasing abundance to meet all your needs. All is mind, and within this mind is all matter and form. Form is but the materialization of mind, therefore, within is the power of materialization, and that power is thought. Thought originates in the consciousness. The consciousness originates in the divine mind and is the moving factor in divine mind, as it is the moving factor in the human mind. But to be able to think correctly in accordance with the divine mind, we must make it the central idea around which everything will move. Hence all negative thoughts can have no place. This consciousness separates us from this world of sin and death and brings life and immortality to light in this life. Man's world alone is the world of the senses, and man created it. God's world is not the world of the senses. Jesus made this plain when he was asked the question, "What is the first commandment of all?" Jesus answered, "The first commandment is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord." Here he admits of supreme power only, one only. It says, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and thy neighbor as thyself." There is one only and none other. And to love him with all your heart and soul is infinitely more than all offerings and sacrifices. The offering of prayers year after year has never taken the sense of error from the world. If the teachings of Jesus had not been misconstrued, this present world would have been rid of the thousands of errors it now has. Good prayers are our acts and false prayers are our words, and by their fruits ye shall know them. Prayer is where the word that is expressed must have a profound meaning and feeling behind it. The word is not on the surface or the tip of the tongue. The old saying is, "What is in my tongue is in my lung," meaning what is on the tongue is in the heart, and unless it is so, then your prayers mean nothing. It is not all those who say, "Lord, Lord," shall enter into the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of true thought action. It is not those who say and understand it, but those who practice it, so that the world will be wiser for the knowledge. It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for one who is learned in this world's knowledge, effects only, to embrace the truth of the Christ. The great truth we must see is that thought will lead to action, action will develop methods, and methods will develop conditions and circumstances, and finally materialization. Unless we can see that clearly, we are lost in a host of images that mean nothing. We are surrounded by images and ideas and cannot see our way out. There is no clear thinking, but there is plenty of confusion. Confusion in your mind means confusion in your circumstances. When the individual sees clearly and knows exactly what to do, he has a clear line of action. Everything moves according to plan. But if you are confused in your thoughts, so will your methods, actions, and materialization be confused. Divine metaphysics is a system that enables you to see clearly, to understand and think fearlessly, and move courageously in a world of shadows. There is nothing to hinder you when you know that all is mind, that matter is mind materialized, that thought is the power that materializes it, and that this thought originates in the consciousness. The consciousness originates in divine mind and is the moving factor in the human mind as well as it is the moving factor in divine mind. Universes and planets are planned by the great divine architect of the universe, so the same mode of action and operation in the divine mind is the same in operation in man's mind, the only difference being in degree. Starting from the beginning, we know there is but one who is God, and there is none other beside him. There is no other being, no other force. There is one being, and this being is your being. It must be, it cannot be anything else. If there is one being, you must also be a being in that being, therefore the being must be in you, and you must be in that being. You cannot call the infinite good in the sense that there is evil, because the infinite knows no evil. Good and evil are relative terms. Good and evil cannot exist as opposing each other. One is, the other is not. There is no such thing as a negative power in the sense of a power which is not the one all-originating power. The negative power we are aware of does not oppose this all-originating power, but is the complement of it. just as the North Pole and the South Pole oppose each other to create attraction. The one force that creates them both is electric, and it is the same in the atom. The electron is but the product of the proton. Similarly, life is but electricity in a higher form. All energy is the same mode of manifestation of the one. It is always making something, and in so doing it may unmake something else. What we know as negative force is the operation of the cosmical law of transition from one form to another. When man knows and understands the law in operation, he sees that within himself is the same law in operation. Immediately the divine life comes into operation in your being. It begins to tear down to build up new and perfect conditions. The old must disappear before the new can be built. That is why when a person is being healed, there is sometimes a strong reaction where divine life is breaking down the old rubbish to eliminate it out of the body in order to build the basis for a new structure. One has really to understand and endure under these circumstances with faith. But when you succumb and imagine that these conditions are negative and evil, you immediately create evil and you resist the good. Then try to understand the good in the action of the Spirit, and then you will find there is complete expression. All these conditions eventually dissolve away and you become stronger and stronger every day. The universe was thought into shape before it became a material fact, and if we are willing to follow along the lines of the great architect of the universe, we will find our thoughts taking form just as the universe took concrete shape. It is the same mind working through the individual, for there is no difference in kind or quality, the only difference being in degree. All is mind, and material matter is mind materialized. Constructive thought action forms mind substance into form and materializes it. Thoughts that are sustained by emotion have more behind them than thoughts that are insipid. One who knows the art of thinking can manifest thoughts, while those who do not know the art manifest but little. The manifestation of thought is most powerful when you become aware of the source of your thinking. Recognition of the fact that the consciousness is the originator of the thought and that consciousness is the divine life. The power of the divine mind individualized in man's mind, and your thoughts become a power. With this understanding, you are thrilled with the thought in the very moment you express that thought. So shall it be. Most people are unaware that they are thinking. They are controlled by the emotion of fear, anger, jealousy, and have lost control of their thinking. The fact is that thoughts engendered in these circumstances are very often manifested. Their manifestation causes more fear, and as attention is bestowed upon them, they are intensified. The clearness of this statement should show you its true meaning, and every endeavor should be made to guard against this condition. We must become aware of the truth of our own creative power and experience the joy, the extraordinary and magnificent joy, of the understanding that our consciousness is the ruling factor, and the point through which we think is the same point through which the divine mind thinks in us. If we can but see the importance of this, it will enable us to think correctly. There will be no more weakness and no more insipid thinking. There will be a thinking that is in accordance with the truth that will bring the materialization of the divine mind into material things. But when our thoughts are engendered through negative emotions and our attention is bestowed upon them, they are intensified. And this is the cause of most illness and failure in life. That is why I am drawing your attention to these great facts, so that, through understanding, you will at least make some effort to correct your thinking. We ourselves create the world from which our future will emerge. We can make it grand and beautiful, or we can make it the opposite and reduce ourselves to impotence in the midst of plenty. You see now the whole story, that thinking is behind everything. But to say that thinking is behind everything is not all. If man thinks deeply about it, he will begin to understand something of the mighty truth within himself, that he is made in the image and likeness of God. But not until it is brought to your notice in such a way as to make you aware of it, will you realize the importance of this. The fact is that we are not limited, and no one can place any limitation upon us except ourselves. Throughout the ages, man has had a belief in an invisible power, yet this belief was vague and inaccurate, with the result that his life was outpictured just as he thought. But as we gain a true knowledge of this great creative power behind all things, we begin to personalize this power we call God, which is the essence of spirit that permeates all things and is the foundation of all things. This substance is inexhaustible and is linked to the subconscious. By understanding the law of thought action, we make it personal or visible in our own lives in the physical plane. The visible is represented by the brain, the nervous system, and the body. The invisible, the impersonal, the spiritual supports the visible and gives it life just as electricity gives power to light. The personal consciousness is the personal entity and the spiritual is the impersonal. The impersonal gives birth to the personal. It is the same kind and quality, except that one is omnipotent and impersonal and is expressed in everyone, and the personal is the expression in the individual. When the individual becomes aware of the impersonal, he links himself with the impersonal, and he can say, I and the Father are one. The personal consciousness that can be aware of this connection can say with conviction, I and the Father are one. What a tremendous and mighty truth this is, when comprehended in its full light. To see it only as a shadow or on the surface means nothing. Anyone who has done any good in this world has thought deeply, has reached to the depths of his own being, and they're extracted from it the essence of everything and then manifested it by the power of his own thought. I'm not telling you something that cannot be done. I'm telling you something that I am doing every day. You have seen with your own eyes people suffering from so-called incurable diseases, healed daily, and adverse circumstances in the lives of others removed, and this is within your own reach. What I can do, you can do if you will but believe. The facts are, man is made in the image and likeness of God, reproducing in individuality the same universal mind consciousness that is the origin of all things, and thus reproducing also its creative process of thought. And because man is ignorant of this truth, he brings upon himself his troubles and limitations. I will read that again, because I know that I have put into one or two sentences a mighty truth requiring contemplation. Man is made in the image and likeness of God, reproducing in individuality the same universal mind consciousness that is the origin of all things, and thus reproducing also its creative process of thought. And because man is ignorant of this truth, he brings upon himself all sorts of troubles and limitations. So we are led step by step out of this ignorance and into this knowledge. We are also led step by step. This gradual unfoldment is a process of growth, first in the individual, then in the race, and this growth is founded upon the law inherent in man himself, which always acts uniformly, making no exception in favor of anyone. It does this positively as well as negatively. As a man soweth, so does he reap. These are truths, as you know, you understand them, and you believe them too, which is much more. Now act upon them. That is the important thing. It is the acting that counts. Whoever of you is defective in wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all men without question or reproach, and the gift will be his. Only let him ask in faith, with never a doubt, for the doubtful man is like the surge of the sea whirled and swayed by the wind, that man need not imagine he will get anything from the Lord. Double-minded creature that he is, wavering in every turn. Are there any words that could give better expression to the meaning behind them? I do not know any other such words. That is why I repeat them. They have sounded throughout the ages. Those who really understood them have taken them to heart and worked on them. Those who did not understand them read them but pass them by and suffer the consequences. Now our ignorance of the law will not exempt us from its operation, no matter whether we ignorantly obey the law or ignorantly disobey it. The law of our being acts just as positively as it does negatively, according to man's thinking and acting, so that according to man's own creation he reaps what he sows. This law does not take into consideration what kind of individual is acting upon it. It does not make any exception, whether a person be a saint or a sinner, a Jew or a Gentile, king or tramp, for these are but illusions in the world of shadows. The law brings about just what the man himself creates. If he understands the law will operate for him. But to enable the law to operate, one must become the law. The plain meaning is, be true to yourself and you will be true to others. God gives because man asks and knows the law of how to receive. When one knows this law, one proceeds along the path humbly yet positive, kindly yet just, and true to oneself. To thine own self be true, and it must follow, as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to a man. The law is the law, and it is not altered to suit the convenience of any individual. The law is immovable, unchangeable. You become the law when you know the law and work with the law. Astounding, yet true, if you could only comprehend it. In fact, when you leave this room tonight, you will probably have forgotten about 99% of it. But if you can hold a modicum of it, just a grain of it, as the Master said, in effect, if your faith be as much as a grain of mustard seed, it will grow. And if you believe in this and have faith in it, verily I tell you, it will grow and grow in your lives. When we recognize the connection between the conscious, the personal, and the impersonal, the individual and the universal, because one is out picturing the other, they are not separate but linked together as one whole. The personal consciousness has the will to choose and can exercise any method it thinks best to solve its difficulties. The impersonal, being the origin of all power, has infinite resources at its command and can bring about results by methods that the individual consciousness cannot even conceive. We can either rely on our limited personal consciousness, or we can use the only scientific method that can bring about real results, that method of uniting with the subconscious, omnipotent and impersonal by consciously using this omnipotent power in our daily lives. To be able to do this, we must become aware of the fact that the personal is the outpicturing of the impersonal, that the individual is the outpicturing of the universal, and the universal with all its intelligence, omnipotence and unlimited resources is at the command of the individual. The personal carries all the attributes of the impersonal, and recognition of this is necessary before these things come into operation. Let us go over this again just to see clearly the true meaning. I feel it is so important that I want to make it as clear as possible. The personal is the outpicturing of the impersonal, the individual is the outpicturing of the universal mind is behind the individual mind, the individual consciousness can call upon the universal mind to manifest what it desires, provided that you have one thing, and that is your belief, your faith that this universal mind will produce for you the things you desire. In other words, to state the whole thing clearly, the universal mind is one complete whole, not separate. It gives birth to the individual mind. In this universal mind there is consciousness, universal consciousness, and the individual consciousness is linked up with the universal consciousness which is omnipotent. In the universal mind there is everything, a complete supply of everything, and there is nothing that has ever come into this world or into materialization except it first existed in the universal mind. The substance of your body, the substance of everything. You see, the whole world, all the universes, everything is of the one substance. All came out of the universal mind, all is mind, and what we see is mind materialized. When the personal consciousness knows, it links up completely with the universal, it brings from the universal through the consciousness, and it manifests into the physical form, and into this physical life you materialize. You actually materialize the universal mind. The brain and the nervous system, and the body is the outward manifestation of mind of a positive nature interpenetrates. The mental substance of a negative nature supports it and directs it. Immediately you have the understanding that you can use this great, mighty, inexhaustible source, and you have reached the stage of understanding of the Christ who knew perfectly, and without any negative thought or doubt whatsoever in his mind, he manifested. He fed the multitudes, he healed the sick, he turned water into wine, everything was done in the complete understanding that I and the Father are one. Now the exercise for this week is to repicture in your mind details of any object under observation. The idea is to be able to repicture in your mind all the details and see them in the mind. Take a face for instance, repicture in your mind the eyes, eyebrows, nose, mouth, chin, cheeks, contour of face, ears, forehead, head, hair, color, etc. Any marks, lines, or spots on the face, no matter what it is, and you will begin to know each other outwardly. The idea is to be able to outpicture in your mind all the details you want to see. Later on you will have an exercise on how to take something you have never seen. It is more difficult to picture something unseen than something you have seen, but by picturing something you have seen you are laying the foundation for something you have not seen. This exercise will make your mind flexible and pliable. It will enable you to visualize details that are necessary if one wants accuracy. In building an intricate machine, the inventor has to see all the details work in his mind. This exercise will enable you to concentrate on the things you want and not on the things you do not want. They are brought into manifestation because you fear them. When you concentrate on the things you fear, your mind is not under control. This exercise will enable you to visualize the constructive and prevent the mind from dwelling on the destructive, for by the law inherent in ourselves we bring about the things we visualize, whether we fear them or not. What I have feared has come upon me. Therefore use the great mighty power that is within you in the recognition that the consciousness of God is the originating power in you, and it is the only power there is. I take a seat beneath a tree and invite my friends to visit me. You may say you are all alone. Your friends have gone, they must have flown. My friends, my friend, you cannot see. They're invited thoughts that visit me. Meditation, great and mighty eternal power in this perfect state of relaxation, we invite thee into our being to express thy great and mighty divine consciousness which enables us to reproduce the image God holds of us. So Modai TV.